Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where our love language is a high NPS score. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. As Valentine's Day approaches, it is a time when we celebrate affection and appreciation. And just a quick note, it's tomorrow if you didn't know, so you still have some time to plan something and be a hero. Yeah, for some reason, things like Valentine's Day, birthdays, anniversaries, and okay, most every important date seem to sneak up on us. At least it does on me. I don't know about you. I have alarms and reminders set up a week or two ahead of time, always. And I try to remember, but it's one of those things, if it's not on my calendar, it just isn't real. Is it that way for you as well? Or is it no big deal? You've got it all down. If it's hard to remember those special dates and occasions in personal lives, I think it's way harder in business. And how can we translate this season of love into the business world to create not just satisfied customers, but true raving fans? And just like any strong relationship, the foundation is built on understanding, commitment, and going the extra mile. Treating your customer relationships with the same care as a Valentine's Day gesture can result in glowing feedback, reduced churn, higher lifetime value, and a really impressive net promoter score, NPS. You hear that all the time. We'll delve into some strategies for deepening customer connections, from personalized experiences that show you truly know and value your clients to consistent excellence and reliability that builds trust over time. Now, for most of us, we're looking for a long term client relationship, not a transactional short term fling with a customer. We want to forge unbreakable connections, add massive value, and become irreplaceable. Creating raving fans is about much more than transactions and revenue. It's about cultivating love for your brand so deep that clients can't help but share it. There's no stronger endorsement than a client or user who loves your brand so much. They tell their friends, family, colleagues, peers, even strangers on the internet. I've worked with top experts in a quest to create an experience that wins heads and hearts of clients and makes every day feel for them feel like Valentine's Day here in Sasslandia. And the only way to know how we're doing is to keep score. And our success or shortfall is reflected certainly in casual feedback, but also in low or no churn, soaring lifetime value, and rock solid net promoter scores. So here's a quick summary of what I've learned and tried to implement. One is to turn clients into Valentines. Sounds funny. But at the heart of every raving fan customer is a love story between them and your brand. And it starts with understanding and anticipating their needs. Does it sound a lot like a relationship? Well, it's because it is. And much like planning the perfect Valentine's Day date, you listen, you take note of their likes and dislikes, and you go above and beyond to make them feel special. It's the surprise bouquet or the handwritten note that turns a routine interaction into a memorable experience. And I still handwrite 2 or 3 thank you notes or appreciation cards every single week. And it sounds small, and honestly, it really is. I should do more, but that week effort is still 100 or 150 more than most other people are doing in a year. It's really easy to make someone feel special because so few even bother. When the bar is on the floor, it's not that hard to step over it and elevate your game. Second is feedback as love letters. Client relationships, feedback is the love letter. It's an open, honest communication that helps you grow and adapt. And I think it's really important that we cherish these letters. Thank people when they send them in, good or bad. Celebrate the good ones. Highlight the great things that your team is doing. Share praise regularly because it becomes contagious among your team. And it's really motivating for everyone because we all crave that recognition. Some things that you get won't be positive. It's just the way it is. Don't read those aloud. Don't necessarily share every one of those with your team. But each piece of feedback is a stepping stone for improvement. take that, internalize. Do they have a point? And they probably have some point in there. Sometimes it gets buried in the hate mail, but usually there is a nugget of truth in there. Find that. And the great thing about it is it shows where you can bring more value and deepen the connection. A complaint is an opportunity to shine. Our client success leader has a phrase. She says, deflect and sparkle. And it means turn that negative into a wow. And so they may come into it with a negative perception or some negative opinion, but they leave going, wow, this was actually a really good experience. And so you turn that into a sparkle. That I think is just a beautiful picture. Third is lifetime value is like everlasting love. Yeah, and maybe we've seen one too many rom-coms, especially this time of year. But high LTV is the equivalent of everlasting love in the business world. Or it's somebody that just sticks around because it's too difficult to switch somewhere else. And I think of banking relationships that way. Yeah, don't necessarily like them, don't hate them. It's so so, but it's such a pain in the butt to switch. We don't want that. We want raving fans. We want them to stick around because they want to be there. And we create that everlasting love through continuous engagement, understanding, and mutual growth together. It's about evolving with your clients, ensuring as their needs change that you're right there changing alongside them, always relevant, always indispensable. And it's a sad day, and it's happened a few times where a client comes and they've been around 4, 5, 6 years, and they go, I think we've just outgrown you. That sucks. That means that we have not done that. We haven't grown along with them. And the only way to do that and do it well is to stay close to them and make sure that we are staying relevant, that we really become indispensable because we're adding so much value that they could never leave. And that's the kind of relationship I think most of us want with our clients. So as Valentine's Day rolls by, and remember, tomorrow, take a moment to reflect on how we can make our clients feel loved and valued all year long. By creating those raving fans, we're not just boosting our metrics, it's a side benefit, but we're building a community of brand lovers ready to stand with us through thick and thin. And there's plenty of that in the business journey. So here's to love, loyalty, and a little bit of magic in every client interaction. Our expert last week was Brady Jensen, founder of Aggregate Insights. We talked about solving the trust problem between marketing and sales. If you've ever had an experience where reality in the field doesn't match the playbook, this is a great episode. I think we've all had that happen. And our founder last Tuesday was James Roth, Chief Revenue Officer at Zoom Info. We talked about how sales has changed, what's working today, and the personal growth required to successfully transition from individual contributor to executive leadership. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Michael Kamleitner, founder of two SaaS companies in the marketing and social media space. One is walls.io and the other is swat.io. And this is the perfect day because Walls is actually a wall of love from your customers. Very cool. It's a social app where they can post accolades, testimonials, and more. It's a great concept. But even cooler than that is Michael has bootstrapped both companies to large, high performing teams, has an executive leadership team, and he has been able to step out of the day to day operations. And they're continuing to just do amazing work. This is what healthy B2B SaaS looks like. It's profitable growth, systemized processes, and true freedom. So, welcome a founder who is building smart, Michael Kamleitner. Hey, Michael, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Happy New Year to all the listeners.
Thank you. Tell us a little bit about your background. Multi-time founder, bootstrapper, which I absolutely love, and running a couple of SaaS companies even right now.
Yes, of course. My original background is a web developer, like a technical person for a very long time. Like more than 14 years ago, started to create marketing applications on the web. Then got super excited about the possibilities that were opened up by Facebook and other platforms by opening their API, which was allowing developers or small independent developers like me to put their little marketing or apps and games and whatever on top of Facebook, on top of MySpace and other applications. And that basically got me going and got my entrepreneurial juices flowing. and it led me to found a small boutique software agency that was dealing mostly with software development on social media platforms. And that again led to the creation or to the inception or to the genesis of two product ideas, which later have become my two bootstrap companies, as you already said, correct. So it was from independent indie web developer to a small little boutique agency and ending up at the two bootstrapped SaaS businesses that I'm running. The first business is Swaddio, Swad.io. It's a social media management tool. You can think about Swaddio like Buffer or Hootsuite, but for larger enterprises. So for social media teams, marketing teams that are running and managing usually a big number of social media channels for different brands or different markets on different social media platforms, and who have to do a lot of community management, content publishing, cross-channel analytics, everything that keeps a social media manager up until the late night usually can be done with our product Swaddio. That's the first company. And my second brainchild, my second baby, is the company I'm currently actively working on as a full-time CEO. And that's walls.io. It's a user-generated content platform that allows marketers to collect social media content from your customers, from your community, from your fans, curate the content, and then use it for different marketing purposes, either by putting it as a widget on your website, your mobile app, your e-commerce store, or use it on physical screens like a TV screen that you would put in the lobby of your office or just hang in your office.
That's great. I think both of them brilliant concepts, and they fit together really well. So really interesting.
Thanks a lot. So of course, both products, both companies, because now they're, of course, meanwhile they have become their own independent companies, represent basically where I'm coming from, where my roots are at, and that is social media marketing. So of course, both fit very well together. While Swaddio is mostly about managing a company's or a brand's owned social media presence, their own channels. Walsio is all about the content produced by everyone else, by the community, by everyone out there. So yeah, that's two ways to see the social media space and how to work in the social media space as a brand.
I like it. With Swaddio, what made you go after the enterprise? Because it seems like a lot of companies in that space, they start out really small and then try to scale up. And you really focused on the enterprise and have a great presence in that market.
So I could tell you, or I could lie to you and say, oh, I had this big master plan almost 10 years ago to go for the enterprise market space because I had better chances there and because whatever. But it's just not true. The truth is, and I'm known to be a frank and honest person. So no, the truth is that Swaddio, initially, it wasn't clear for me back then if Swaddio is going to be a feasible and profitable standalone company or product. So for a very long time, I was actually fighting with myself. Is this just a side project? While I was still doing the agency business, right? So we were still doing agency business, custom software development for companies. And on the other hand, we were doing the first Swaddio prototype. So it was for quite a long time not clear, is this a side project? Can we, if we are lucky, maybe sell it to a handful of customers and have a little bit of scale? But back then, it was almost unthinkable to believe, hey, this can be a standalone company with now more than 40 employees and really many hundreds and hundreds of customers. I didn't have that far sight or that vision back then, I will be honest. And so I did what I knew best, and that was working with the larger companies that were our agency customers already. So we were selling the software, the SaaS product, basically to our existing customer base in the agency. And those tended to be larger companies, larger brands, because it was still early days. Social media was pretty new back then. Social media marketing was pretty new. And it was mostly the biggest companies that were active on this space. So without having a grand master plan or a big understanding, frankly, of go-to-market and how to define your ICP, that's all things I had to learn, and luckily was learning later on. But back then it was all very organic. beginning. I had an agency business, I had a product idea, and I made the product idea fit the existing customer base from the agency. That's the honest answer. And that led us to bigger companies or to enterprise companies. And that also pretty much defined our core target audience in terms of geography as well. So we started out to be active mostly in the German-speaking countries, again, because we were having this agency customer base already.
That's really smart. Take it. Did you build a product originally for internal use and then decided to sell it? Or how did that come about?
Not really internal use, but we had this one big client in the agency, which was interestingly another agency, a brand agency, who were super early in Austria and in Germany to establish social media services for brands. And they originally approached us with the question or with the idea or with the request really to build a very crude but fundamentally working prototype for all these things, for community management and stuff like that. So it was not built for our internal use, but it was like semi-internal for this agency customer that we had. And really the first iteration of Swaddio, of what later became, it didn't have a name, it didn't even have its own domain registered. It was really just like a subdomain, something like tool.agency.name or something like that. And that's how it stayed for at least a year. So it was internal use. And from there we saw, from there we got the idea, but actually could make sense to productize the whole thing. And that's what we did.
What was that moment like when you realized that, hey, I've got something here that can go out there and be a standalone product, and this is not just a side project, but can really become a significant business?
So it took me quite a while to get to that point, to be honest, and to really jump into the cold water and say, okay, let's take this chance and really try it. I think on a spectrum of risk awareness, I think most founders have a natural appetite for risk, and I would say that's also true for me. But still, on the spectrum of risk awareness or risk happiness and funds, I'm probably still more on the lower end. So it took me quite a while to really understand and see the chance. In hindsight, I think that's still okay. I'm not saying that was a wrong decision. Sometimes it takes the time it takes and to build something meaningful and great. So the way I approached it back then was to gradually shift over the resources that I had, the engineering resources, later marketing resources, shift them over from the agency business, which I wasn't so much interested in anyway anymore, and shift the resources slowly and gradually over to the product. So the same happened with revenue. The agency revenue was scaling down over the course of a year or two. And meanwhile, we were lucky enough that the product revenue slowly ramped up. So it was a process. It took at least 1 or 2 years, which allowed me to get comfortable with the idea of not running an agency anymore, but running a product business, hopefully scalable product business. But it took its time to get myself convinced that this actually makes sense.
That's really smart, and I like the balance of going at it slowly. The opposite of that, you see all the time founders who build something and they get the MVP done, and they're out there trying to raise money or just go to market, and everything is placed. All the chips are placed on this one bet that this product is going to be the next big thing.
Yeah. I think this is really a question of mentality or of character. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think it's a fundamental question that everyone who wants to start their own business at one point will have to answer and decide for him or herself. Do I want to go that all-in route, and do I want to the same question is of course relevant for bootstrapping versus fundraising, right? That's also a very fundamental question, right? And it's connected to the question of how fast do I want to go to market? Do I need to be super fast, or can I give myself, my team, my customers a little bit more time? And again, of course, sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I 10 years ago would have picked another approach, would have said, okay, you know what, let's completely scrap the agency business from today to tomorrow. Let's stop it completely. Let's move everything to the product, and let's just hope that we can ramp up revenue fast enough so that we're still in business in 6 months. maybe it would have gone okay, maybe not. I don't know. But doing it a little bit slower and on the safer side, I think for me, for my character, for my mentality, it proved to be the right decision.
Yeah. Anytime it works, it's always a good decision. So whether you go
Yeah.
all in or whether you take it a
Yes.
little bit slower, I mean, when it works, you're a genius.
Yes.
I like that.
Hindsight is 2020, and
Yeah,
that's true.
always. Talk about walls.io. How did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, we are now like fast forward a few years, and Swaddio was already productized and already starting to get some initial traction. And what happened next is that I was still doing a little bit of agency business on the side. So this was more like at the end of the phase out of the agency. And then something funny happened. We came up with another idea, the idea for Walls.io. And again, it was something that we basically thought, like me and my team, it's a nice little side project. Let's do it. It was for a birthday party of an industry friend of ours or of mine, where we just had this idea to set up this video wall that would collect social media content around the party, around the event. Of course, back then it was mostly about Twitter, but also platforms which maybe some of the younger listeners or viewers are not even familiar with anymore. Things like Flickr, which is now owned by Yahoo, I think still, or Foursquare, which was a popular location-based service. So for this party, we would collect all these posts that were creating buzz around the party and then displaying it on a video screen just to get the social media flywheel going and let other people see the interactions and then hopefully encourage them to post themselves. And that worked out pretty well. And it was a great success. And the next day, after sobering up from the party, I was there again having a potential product idea and had to answer myself the question, do I just wanna let this idea sit on a shelf, or do I want to start investing resources in building out this prototype into a product? And again, the smart or the rational decision would probably have been to say, no, let's leave the second idea. Let's focus on Swaddio. I already have one promising, but still very immature back then business at hand. So let's focus on this one and let's not distract myself with a second product idea. Unfortunately, I did not make the rational decision, but gave into excitement. And so that is when I started to productize Walls.io, which then later became the second company. It was a good decision because now I am lucky that I ended up with two independent, profitable, successful bootstrap businesses. But of course, it was also like it was a very fine. It was a fine line to go between failure and success, to really split not just myself and my focus, but of course also our company resources between the two products. I think I can be quite lucky and humble and happy about the fact that we could make it work, not just once and twice. And I specifically say we because although I was a single founder, I'm a single founder. It's of course only possible by having a really good team on both products, great engineers, a great CTO who later became my CEO at Swaddio. So I was really blessed to have a good team in place. Otherwise, I think trying to bootstrap two products, two companies at the same time, that's probably otherwise would never have worked.
That's really good. And I like that, being able to take one that's successful and then roll into another one, and then you have that team there that continues on promoting that CTO into the leadership role.
Yeah.
That transition for you when you went from being a doer to leading a team to then leading an organization.
Oh, that's a learning process that is still the learning curve is still very steep for me. I would say I'm still at 10% of the way done or something like that. Look, I think again, this is something that is typical for my mentality or my background, that I don't see myself as an expert in any specific area, but more like a universalist, someone who can is interested in and can adapt and dive into many topics. I think that's a highly important requirement or attribute for, especially for bootstrappers, where you really like jump from one role to the other. After a few years, I really had to stop working on code, developing myself. Because I realized that I'm just not the best coder in the world, never was. But I had my days, I had my good days, of course, but I had to realize this is not that this is not my core strength. And then I moved on, and then I did some marketing because there was no one else doing marketing. And then once I could hire someone to do marketing properly, then I let them do that. And then I went to start doing a little bit of sales until I could hire another person who was more qualified with doing sales. And so I was like basically hopping from role to role, whatever was necessary and needed at the specific stage of one of the two companies. And I that mix and that constant change in my professional life, that I basically have to reinvent my role, I don't know, once every 2 years or something like that. And that keeps things definitely exciting for me. And I wouldn't want to have it any other way. But of course, there's always constant learning involved. If you have to dive in new topics every 2 years, you have to be realistic and honest with yourself that you are starting these things as a newbie. And that means a lot of learning, a lot of trial and error. Many things go wrong, of course, in the beginning. The only thing that you can really do to avoid this is build up a good peer group of other entrepreneurs, of other executives who are willing to share and help you out with their knowledge and their experience. Otherwise, it's really just trying trial and error and see what somehow works out.
One key reason I've been successful is fresh outside perspective from experts and fellow founders that are in the trenches. And if you would like an on demand CXO team, a community of founders, and tools to make your business world class, check out Champion Leadership Group. It's the ultimate resource for SaaS leaders to continue to develop themselves, scale their companies, and never walk alone on the journey. We're kicking off a new Scale Up Accelerator this month, and I would love for you to be a part of it. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is for you. If you feel like the world's best kept secret, we got your back. And if you are crushing it already, but you know that your company has more in the tank, this is definitely for you. Now is the time to elevate from success to significance. You'll gain access to a fractional C suite team, a community of scaling SaaS founders, and the SaaS Fuel operating system built into software to make your business world class and support a premium valuation. Isn't it time to upgrade from traction to scale? Learn more at championleadership.com. It's where leaders evolve and companies transform. Apply to join the next cohort today at championleadership.com.
Yeah. You talk about the transitions pretty easily. And it sounds like it was easy to move from one to the next. And for me, it's always been really difficult to let things go and delegate. Is that something that is a challenge for you as well? Or is that something that's come easy?
It's absolutely a challenge. So that's I didn't want to. I'm sorry if I make it sound so easy, and I don't want to give our listeners the impression, because you're right. It is not the learning curve or the requirement to dive into new fields very often is not easy. I already mentioned that. It's also not easy, and I get to your point regarding delegation. I will get to that, but before that, I wanted to say it's also interesting how companies or organizations change at certain sizes. It's a completely different way to work together, to collaborate. If you're a team of 5 to 10 people, I felt like there was a big change around 20, a headcount of 20. That's where I really found out where I felt a very big change, because for me, until 15 to 20 maybe, I was still having one-to-one work relationships with everybody. I was still like really knowing everybody very good, or working together directly in one or two projects. Once you are at 20, that's probably not the case anymore. There's suddenly a layer in between in many cases. So you lose a little bit the direct contact with everyone in your team. And I think it's the same. Somebody said these changes come every time the company size, the headcount doubles. Like with 40 to 50, that's another big change, which probably with 100, I didn't experience that yet, but I can very much relate to that experience. It's, by the way, also one reason why later on I decided to focus on my second company, Swaddio, because it's still smaller, because I got to know myself better and realized that I actually prefer to work in the smaller team. Because I really enjoy having very direct relations with almost everyone on my team. So that was a bit like a long-winded answer. You originally asked for delegation, right?
Yes. It was a very good answer. Very good answer. But yeah, delegation, is that something that is easy for you, or
Yeah.
is that a challenge as well?
It's getting better. I would put it like this. So it needs
That's a good answer.
it needs constant work or a constant reminder. I have to constantly remind myself to get better at this. I did almost a year ago. I read a great book. I'm not sure if I can plug that here. The book is called "Buy Back Your Time." I'm not sure if
It's a very good
you
book.
know.
Yes,
I think it's by Dan Martell, if I'm not completely.
correct.
Yeah. Yeah. So anybody listening, thinking about delegation, this is really a great recommendation. Actually, I plan to read it regularly, like maybe once a year, to remind myself of how important the delegation is. The problem, of course, I think what most people see with delegation, or at least for me, is the initial like barrier that you're actually, of course, have to invest time first before you can save time, right? So you can't just hand over a task and hope that it gets done properly. No,
Right.
of course, you first have to invest time by training the person who you want to delegate to, by giving them feedback. Yes, also by checking in on them and making sure that the results are right, by documenting everything. So obviously, there's first an upfront investment before it pays off for yourself. That's, of course, a trivial insight, but it's, I think, what keeps most people, or at least that's for me, the case it's for me, that keeps us from delegating, because we are afraid of that upfront time investment. I think you need to. That's the only that's where what I have to work on still, to break through this mental barrier and just understand and remind myself that it's the only way to scale your own time or your own impact on the company or on the organization, by breaking through this initial barrier or this initial upfront investment. And of course, and again, reading this book is, if someone here in the audience is also battling with this, I can just again recommend the book, because it gives you new perspectives on how to break through it. Simple techniques like recording playbooks. Basically, that means you would use a screen recording tool, or you can even use Zoom for that. You can have a Zoom call with yourself and just record it, and just do the task with recorded screen. Put it somewhere on your wiki, on your Notion, or whatever you're using as a knowledge base, and document the process there, which can then be very easy way for someone else to take over and replicate what you are doing. Things like that. I think it's definitely it's worth it investing in that. And where I really saw how this can play out, and how much time it can save me and make me free for other things, is of course when you do this kind of delegation with a personal assistant or a virtual assistant, if you prefer it that way. That is basically then where you as a founder or as an executive are, of course, really challenged to make right and to fulfill that promise of documenting and delegation. Once you have this virtual assistant working for you, then you really have to follow through with that.
That's really smart. And you're right. Having that assistant there doing things and do, if you're one of the things in the book, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. And I think that was really interesting, just perspective, because if you're doing those simple tasks that are repetitive, that can easily be handled by somebody else who would love to do that, and maybe it's something you don't like to do, then, why do you keep doing it? But as founders, as leaders, a lot of times we hold on to those things because other people won't do them right, meaning they won't do them our way, or think that we're really good at it.
And we can talk on I could talk about this specific topic for hours. Please stop me if you want to move on. What I said before, one big reason why many people have a hard time delegating is this understanding of the upfront time investment. I think another big reason is that we are too much looking for perfection. Although, if you're honest, nobody is so perfect. If I do the task, it's also not 100% perfect, right? But even if you accept 99% or whatever, that's not the point. If the person you're delegating the task to can do 85%, we have to be fine with that. We have to be fine with that. We have to give feedback. The next time they can make maybe 90%. They will never do it exactly the same way we do. That's okay. We have to live with that. But we can progress in that direction, and it's definitely possible by giving good quality feedback. Also, it doesn't matter if the person you're delegating to, if it takes them a little bit more time than it would take you to do it. That's probably will always be the case, especially for entrepreneurs who tend to have the quality of being very efficient when working. At least I would clap on my own back and say that about me, that efficiency is something I would claim for myself. It's okay if your assistant or the person you're delegating to takes, I don't know, even if it takes them twice as long as it takes you. The main point is that you have it off your table and free up your time for what really matters. So I think that's another barrier, that we are striving too much for perfection and for being super fast and super efficient as we would be. Once you get rid of these barriers, which are probably never achievable unless you are lucky and find that assistant wunderkind that can, I don't know, this prodigy that can do everything exactly like you, like this. Maybe if you clone yourself, if you have a little mini me that really does, but that's not going to happen. Let's be honest. So it's important to have like realistic goals. Aim for 80% and then slowly ramp it up, maybe by giving feedback to 85%, 90%, and then you're there. That's more than enough. That's cool.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, a lot of times they'll even do it better. So we think that it's not 100%, but ultimately they do it even better and get faster. And wow, I had no idea it could be that good.
Yes, that exactly. You will be surprised. That's absolutely true. So I actually started working with a virtual assistant only a few months ago, and so for me, it's also it's another learning curve, another thing that I want to figure out, and it doesn't work from day one, but it's getting better. And you're right, since you were mentioning it now, there's of course also things that they do much more carefully than you would do. I don't know, let's talk about travel organization, travel planning, where you would probably invest only 5 minutes and then pick the first flight that you find on whatever search engine you're using. They are much more careful. They are thorough. They compare prices. They find the best, whatever. So you can also, another interesting strategy is I think everyone has these tasks where we tend to procrastinate on for whatever reason.
Absolutely,
We are blocked. I don't know. Let's see if I can come up with an example. For me, actually, it is travel planning. I don't enjoy doing it, and I'm sometimes just frozen, or I don't know. I can't move on. Like I have decision paralysis sometimes. I know I have 3 options to go at this date or in the next date, whatever, and then I'm basically paralyzed. And then I move it along, and then 2 days before the trip, I think, now I really have to book the flight. And everyone, I think many people have these kind of things. Something in your backlog that you just keep on pushing on, usually because you just don't enjoy doing it very much. The perfect target or perfect thing that you should delegate pretty quickly to an assistant. For me, it's travel planning. For others, it might be gift shopping, for example, or whatever. I think everybody has these things where you just can't get them done.
Yeah. You decided to bootstrap both of your companies, and I think that is a brilliant choice. How did you decide to do that versus go out and raise funds?
So again, it gets back to the way the 2 products were brought to light first, without having the specific plan to make these larger, bigger companies. more, okay, maybe it's a side project. So with that in mind, of course, fundraising wasn't even an option. Secondly, 10 years ago, even a little bit more than 10 years ago in Austria, Vienna, fundraising, like going to a VC, was not a very typical thing to do. Luckily, that has changed in the last 10 years. Austria now has a vibrant startup ecosystem. It has a handful or two handful of good VCs even. Also, you can, of course, fundraise outside of Austria easier than 10 years ago. But back then, it wasn't a natural thing to do, to be honest. And only years later, I made the conscious decision not to try fundraising for reasons I already partly mentioned before, because you have to think about very carefully what's the right approach, the right scale or growth trajectory for your company, and how that matches with you as a founder personality. What I mean by that is what you usually buy with VC money, with funding, with external funding, is a faster or steeper growth trajectory, right? But it comes at which is exciting, of course. Who doesn't want to sit on a rocket ship? Hopefully it's a rocket ship that
Right.
takes off. So that sounds very exciting, of course, and it was exciting to me as well. But it comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of giving up control. It comes at the cost of living in a more unstable environment. Your team size has to scale up way more quicker. You will have a lot of bad experiences with hiring the wrong people because you have to hire way too fast. You have your investor sitting in your back and demanding a quarterly or monthly financial reports that you can't give really because you have no clue about financial reports. In the worst case, you will have to raise money again, most likely, because you're growing so fast that your profitability is usually not there yet, which means you have to think about the next funding round. And at one point, of course, you can become a passenger in your own company, and someone else might call the shots. I'm painting a quite extreme or negative picture here. Of course, it can go also very well, but you have to be aware of this possibility once you go the funding the funding approach. Bootstrapping, on the other side, for me was a better match with my personality, having a slower growth trajectory, but always 100% control, stability in terms of my company, in terms of my team, and always being able to make key decisions on my own without having to consult or without having to let others decide that, the investors. So I think if you put the cards on the table, I think every founder should be able to make a decision which is the right model for them to go. For me, this is one of the decisions where I'm absolutely positive that I picked the right way for myself.
That's good. And with the products coming out of the agency, you're almost your own angel investor. And now you're an angel investor in other companies too.
You could say so, yeah. And I understand, of course, that it was a blessing, of course, that I had the boutique, tiny, small, but still profitable agency in the background, which allowed me to basically bootstrap the business. Not everyone has these options. And for some businesses, especially when you think about B2C companies, venture funding is the only possible way to go. So, of course, you have to take that with a grain of salt, what I've said about bootstrapping and how cool it is. Yeah. Yeah. But sorry, I did digress now, right? You mentioned the angel investing, right? Yeah.
Yes. You're an angel investor. Like, what criteria do you use when deciding what startups to support? How do you pick the winners? The market's crowded.
First of all, it has yet to be seen if I'm my capability of picking winners is by far not decided yet. So I'm not sure if I can answer that question. No, but seriously, I think I'm very optimistic and I have quite some good companies in my honestly small but growing little angel portfolio where I'm very excited and bullish about. But one thing you have to be also very realistic and clear about. If you I did my first angel investment almost 4 or 5 years ago. That means, meanwhile, I already also had to experience the fact that some of my investments are not here anymore. So they had to close shop for whatever reason. So when you start out investing or angel investing, many people, including myself, you have this great this great idea that you think, oh, of course I'm smarter than everyone else. I will pick the winners and I will defy that typical only 1 in 10 startups work out rate. I will be better. I will have a much better. Of course, it's not true. It's just, and the earlier you invest, the harder it would be to pick winners. I think the first thing that you have to, if you're interested in investing at that early stage, of course, you have to realize that the basic law that most of the investments will probably not turn out very well is just true, which makes it, to an extent, makes it a numbers game. So that means you need to think about a portfolio. Otherwise, it's most likely not going to work well, which means depending on the depth of your pockets, at least for me, that means I can only do very small tickets, very small investments. I need to have a certain number of investments, let's say 10 or 20, and I'm not there yet, of course, slowly ramping up. And since don't have these deep pockets, it means only very small tickets, which again means that usually I have to sell myself as an angel investor and sell myself. I need to be perceived by a founder as like the smart money. So it makes mostly sense if I can contribute something to a startup beyond the money, like my experience in B2B SaaS or in social media marketing. So that already narrows the potential, the list of potential startups I can meaningfully invest in. So that was all some learnings that I had to make in the first few years. And again, I'm like so many other things, I'm completely realistic that I'm just in the beginning at the beginning of the learning curve in terms of angel investments. And I think I still need to answer your question. That was a very long-winded way to say it's, for me, very hard to explain how to pick winners. The only thing that I can say, since we are talking about very early stage investing, I think for me, it's 80% about the team. There's always the 3 aspects: team, market, and the actual product. I think the actual product, that you can almost forget about it, because in most cases where you invest that early, the product will change, they will pivot, or they will do something completely different in 2 years. So I wouldn't look at the product too much. Of course, market, yes, it makes sense to be in an exciting market. Yeah, I wouldn't deny that, but still the number one thing I invest in is the founder team. These need to be ideally complementing diverse team of 2, 3, or 4, something like that, founders who I really believe in, that they can do something great together, whether it's this product idea or the thing they will do afterwards when the first thing doesn't work. That's the most important factor.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm the same way. I absolutely invest in the people and the product. And you're right. It does change.
Yeah.
It morphs over time, and the market may change, but the people, you find great people that have good vision and can execute, and the rest of it, it'll change, but it doesn't necessarily matter as much. It's all about the people, especially early on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, I don't have a real track record to show off yet. Honest with that, I had I had one significant success very early on, where I was participating in an exit of a startup that I had like a tiny share of, just because I was investing sweat capital. Basically, I didn't have any money back then, which really paid off. But this is one case where it was exactly like you said. The first iteration of the product was something completely different than what they were doing the exit a few years later. Like, it had almost nothing to do with the first product. Yeah. But to my credit, even back then, I had this feeling like this founding team is just really amazing. It was like a team of 3 who were really very complementary, and I even made a little memo to myself back then that said the number one reason is the team, and it turned out to be true. It's just one anecdote, but it proves your point, or I agree with you.
What do you think the biggest challenges SaaS founders face today? What are those, and how do they overcome the challenges to build something that's successful?
I think so. You mean the challenge before you go to market in like finding the great product idea and finding product market fit, basically, you mean? Or
it could be that. Just what are the biggest challenges? It could be SaaS founder. It could be later on. It could be scaling from 10 to 20 to 100 people. What do you think that the biggest challenges are?
Yeah, I think especially for B2B SaaS, and I'm usually referring to B2B when I talk about SaaS. Of
Sure.
course, there's B2C as well, but for me, it's most B2B. I think the biggest issue, the biggest problem that most of the SaaS B2B SaaS founders in my network, in my peer group, are reporting or talking about in the previous 1 or 2 years is simply put that it became way more difficult to grow revenue. So this is, of course, for a big part of that. A big part of the reason, of course, is the macroeconomic situation, which hasn't become easier. But it's also about saturation of so many software categories, having so many competitors, many of the existing go-to-market channels like content marketing being saturated. So revenue growth has become just way more harder. Closing new business has become way more harder. Sales cycles have become longer for so many companies. Budgets have become tighter, especially in the last 1 or 2 years. People are trying to consolidate or to decrease their SaaS bills, even big companies. So I think that is something that is challenging for a lot of B2B SaaS companies. There's, of course, always outliers. You might be in a super hot category like AI has been in the last 12 months, where this might not apply. But I think for 90% of the B2B SaaS companies, I think the founders would agree with me that the last 1 or 2 years, revenue growth has been the number one issue or challenge.
Sure. Where can people learn more about you and about Walls.io online and also Swaddio?
Yes, of course. So I'm most active on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. Just look up my name, and that's Michael Kamleitner. I hope you will be so kind to maybe you could add the link here because it's a German name and might not be easy to.
Yeah, we'll link it all in the show notes.
Perfect. You can also, if you have any questions or want to get in touch super directly, you can also email me. That's michael@walls.io. And walls.io obviously is also the website of my second company where I'm working full-time right now. My first company is Swaddio. That's the social media management tool. So if you're interested in the social media tool space, I would be happy if you check out one or even both of my companies. Get in touch on LinkedIn if you want to discuss B2B SaaS, social media marketing, if you bootstrapping, angel investing. So that's basically the biggest topics that we also covered today. I'm always happy to enlarge my network there.
Fantastic. Michael, great conversation. I really appreciate having you on SaaS Fuel.
I can only copy that, of course. I'm super happy to be here today. Thanks for the opportunity. It was a fun conversation. It's great to kick off the year with being a guest on your show. Thanks a lot.
Thanks again, Michael, for coming on the show and sharing your insights and resources. You can learn more about Michael and his companies, walls.io and swat.io. And of course, check him out on social as well. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. Every link we talked about, every resource we talked about right there, saasfuel.com. And remember, we have full episodes, shorts, training, and more on our YouTube channel. Leaders help leaders, and you can do a 2-for-1 in this case by sharing the podcast with a friend. They will appreciate it, and I absolutely do appreciate it because that's how we grow. So thank you for sharing. And hey, everyone who shares this week gets Cupid's Arrow Laser Pointer. It is perfect for highlighting your significant other's best traits. Or hey, if you don't have one, you can play an irresistibly romantic game of catch the light with one of your pets. Well, join us Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series where my guest is Kenneth Burke. He is VP of Marketing for Text Request, who has fueled growth from startups to billion-dollar enterprises. He'll be here to share his secrets on mastering SaaS marketing and building a fan base via text. And then next Tuesday, we have founder, actually 3-time founder, Mike Adams. He is founder and executive chairman of grain.com, which is an incredible tool that I've actually started using since we talked. And so we'll talk about startup wins and losses, crazy acquisition stories, go to market, and generative AIs. I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.